Cool. There is objection. There is objection. I call Stephen Browning.
Mr. Speaker, the Green Party opposes this bill, and opposes it for a number of reasons. It actually sees some merit in a number of aspects of it, but there are some glaring shortcomings with the bill. And I'd start in terms of the interests of Māori. We have a problem here where, albeit the Select Committee in its report suggests that Māori interests are looked after or could be looked after later on with amendments as part of a government response to the Tribunal's report on Y262, it's actually woeful in terms of support for Māori interests, and what is very important is Indigenous plants for the whole of New Zealand. Mr. Speaker, if we look at the Māori Advisory Committee that is to be set up as part of this bill, a commissioner appoints a committee called the Māori Advisory Committee. The commissioner may at any time appoint a person to the committee or remove a person from the committee as that commissioner sees fit. I think that shows no sign of representation or certainty that Māori interests are being represented. The function of the committee is to advise the Commissioner on request. So the committee doesn't even get to get stuck in as it sees fit. It only gives advice on request to the Commissioner. That is inadequate as well. And the Commissioner may consider, but is not bound by advice given by the Māori Advisory Committee. Why not? What is the purpose of this just self-appointed by the Commissioner committee that may or may not even give serious cognizance? It must consider, but it does not give any effect necessarily. And the committee may regulate its own procedure subject to any direction given by the Commissioner. The Green Party sees this as woefully inadequate. Mr. Speaker, I've tabled a supplementary order paper on the crucial issue of making sure that companies cannot patent life. This bill is very, very patchy in that area. We can't afford to, intentionally or not, allow for the patenting of life forms. It would encourage biopiracy of Indigenous resources. It would turn life forms into commodities to be used for profit. It would put up barriers to the free flow of scientific research. Patents were designed to ensure that inventors could gain financial returns for their hard work and ingenuity, and that makes sense in terms of things, in terms of chemistry and physics, but not life, Mr. Speaker. Living organisms were originally excluded from the patent system. They were a product of nature. That's what it was seen as, a product of nature, not a human invention. But, Mr. Speaker, this changed in 1980 when courts elsewhere found that they could be. And what made this possible was genetic engineering. The tweaking of genes, now classed as an invention. There is very little invention about it. Most organisms, and my supplementary order paper talks of exclusion from the Patents Bill of organisms, most of them have 30,000 genes, whether it's a human, a plant, whatever. Genetic engineering changes just one or two and butchers up a whole lot of others in the process. with little regard to further on effects. But then, because they've just done that, 1 or 2 genes out of 30-odd thousand, they then say they've got something significantly different and it deserves a patent. Rubbish. But organisms and genetics are part of our global living heritage. They're part of our growing heritage. Allowing the passing of this bill without supporting my supplementary order paper will lead to the continued blocking of pure research, of open research, private profit making from our collectively owned genes and resources, and importantly, will continue the process of stealing resources, this time including the intellectual property of Māori, removing it from the commons for private gain. Instead of rewarding ingenious inventors, the patent system applied to living organisms is rewarding just big business. These industries seek out organisms and draw upon the intellectual property of Indigenous peoples and then use lab techniques to isolate parts of that organism and patent it. Terms are bioprospecting, when we hear of them going into the jungles of South America, or the scrublands or forests and wetlands of New Zealand, for that matter, to find plants and organisms that they will then try and claim some level of ownership over. Biopiracy is another. There are instances with plants that are absolutely used by full cultures where big business has got in to patent that so that they can have control of any potential gain on an international level. Mr. Speaker, I've just toured this country with 2 Australian farmers to talk about the effect that genetic engineering has had in their communities. And the important part of that was that the product of genetic engineering that affected them so much was so influential because it had a patent on it. They spoke to farmers and others all over New Zealand about the financial risks imposed on them by the patenting of life by others. What they had was a situation, and the best example was probably in, it's a mix of Western Australia and Victoria, where Monsanto and other companies have been allowed to let go a GE, genetically engineered, genetically modified, whatever you want to call it, patented canola plant. Just a couple of genes shifted in that out of 30-odd thousand, and they've been able to patent it for resistance to a herbicide.
2 minutes.
But, Mr. Speaker, there's a problem with that, and that was that they not only do they have to pay a lot extra for the seed because they have been told all sorts of stuff that it was going to be better for them, there was contamination of neighbouring farmers. They had no choice in it, but they were contaminated. But because there was a patent on there, Monsanto is able to claim royalties off it. So when they grow again the next year and there's contamination, Monsanto can get end point royalties, it can charge a fee for the seed, it can do all sorts on that. That is just unethical. It can only happen because of a patent on there. There's an increased cost of seed. Not only that, with a patent, sometimes they are obliged to follow particular agronomic instructions on how they're meant to grow, what sprays they're meant to use. There's an issue then that there's actually ownership. So Monsanto, in this case, actually owns the plant, the material that's in someone's paddock that did not want it. They also then control the supply chain. They say where to get something better than $50 less per tonne for the end product, where they even have to deliver it if they only want to get $10 less a tonne. Patenting life is not the way forward, Mr. Speaker, and so I ask all the parties in this House to support at committee stages my supplementary order paper to protect living organisms from being able to be patented. In New Zealand we have another vision. It's 100% pure New Zealand, a clean green New Zealand, and we do not see any need for this sort of patenting in there. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Ko Paseta Sam Lutuinga.
Mr. Speaker, it's a privilege to stand and speak